looking for approval of the agenda. Motion and support. Any additions or deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public comments. Public, your chance to comment. You have 3 minutes. Step up and give us your name, please. Mr. Duke, are you up? No? Okay. Seeing no public comment, it's closed. Committee items, minutes from the March 11th meeting. Need a motion? Motion and support. Any corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. District Court semi-annual report. Tammy Bates, good morning.
Good morning. It says semi-annual, but I'm going to give you an annual. I have a short little presentation for you.
Tammy, can you pull that mic a little closer so we
I will.
capture your voice? Thank you. So Tammy, you've got what's on your website plus this 18-page snapshot, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I was hoping that everyone was able to see what was on the website. For those new commissioners, welcome. And I just want you to be aware that every month on our website is our monthly report, so you can look at that at the end of, usually the beginning of the month, we will have posted everything that happened the month prior. So if you're ever wondering what's happening with District Court, go ahead and pull up that website and you'll see our monthly report. So right now, we do have the 2018 annual report. It is there electronically for you. I have hard copies if anyone is interested. Let me know. Didn't think most of you would, but I brought them just in case. So instead of going through the 50-some page annual report here, I wanted to kind of shrink it down into this snapshot and just kind of highlight a few things for you. First off is our caseload. It's no surprise we've talked about our caseload since the beginning of 2018 and the decline. The decline is something that is not new. It's been happening since probably about 2010, if not before. But if you look at just comparing 2017 to 2018, our traffic filings were down 3,140. Our civil filings were down 104, and our criminal new filings were down 236. So our total caseload overall was down 2,808 for 2017, and then 6,408 for 2016. So you can see there was quite a drop from 2016 to 2017. I've given you a little graph here so that you can just get a better idea.
Tammy,
Yes.
you want questions now? Okay.
Yes.
So,
Good morning, Tammy.
Good morning.
We keep hearing, this is a trend we seem to have going. Do we need as many people, or do we need as many judges? I know the judges probably isn't our call, but it seems like we keep trending downward, downward, downward.
The judges are not my call. Judges are something that is put together by the state, and it's based on cases. It's based on, they do a time study every year. We have had our time study. I've heard nothing from SCAO as to any judicial reductions. As a matter of fact, I spoke with State Court Administrative Office last week, and they said we're not even in line for a second review. So that tells me that we more than likely will not lose a judge. Staffing, I can tell you that we have decreased our staff by about 25%. In our traffic department, you see that our filings are down about 50%, 52% from 2010 to 2009. Back in 2010, we had 9 traffic employees, 8 maybe, 8, and as of today, we have 1. So we have 1 traffic clerk that is processing these tickets. So to answer your question, no, we don't need as many, and yes, we have reduced our staff. Okay. So getting back to the chart here, that just is giving you an idea from 2010 to 2018, and like I said, it's about 52% reduction. I wanted to put a number to that for you. The average cost is about $125 per traffic ticket. So from 2018 to 2017, with a difference of $3,140, there's a loss of revenue of about $392,500. If you take from 2010 to 2018, that's about 17,280 filings for a loss of $2 million, just to put that in perspective. Our collections department did a fine job in the past year. We collected $2,065,550. External collections, that is the collections that we contract with outside of the court. So those cases that we really have tried and they're several years old and we just can't seem to track those folks down, we refer those cases out to an external source. And they produced $194,000 for us. We collect money on behalf of Circuit and Family Court, so we collected $9,225 on behalf of Circuit and $4,405 on behalf of Family Court.
Tammy, is there more to collect there? I mean, it seems like an awful small amount compared to the total collections that you're doing.
What we look at there is the court-appointed attorney fees, and that's really what we're going after. Anything other than that, we don't handle. Then district court, so our staff, our collection officers collected $1.8 million. Yes. Excuse me.
I mean, if an officer brings into jail system and he goes to court a person that would have outstanding fines from 3, 4, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 of them, that person for payment, or how would that work? I mean, we know we have the person in our custody. We know they owe us money. What would the action be at that point in time? I mean, certainly up to the judge, but
Certainly.
normally what would
Certainly, and each case is unique, depending on the circumstances. If it's only a matter of fines and costs, most of the time what the judges do is they list the bond. The amount of the bond is the amount of what is owed. So if someone owed $500, they would say, pay $500 and you can get out, and then everything's taken care of. If they're not able to post that bond, then they would have to go before the judge, and the judge would decide what to do at that time. If there are other terms involved, say for instance, someone's was on probation, did not complete the terms of their probation, so there's a warrant for failing to comply with probation as well as failing to pay fines and costs, it may not be a cash-only bond. So each case is unique.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Income tax garnishment. So last year we attempted to go after those folks that owed us money via their income tax returns. So we were able to collect $109,000 in income tax returns, and I think that was a pretty good chunk for our first time. We've done it again this year, so we're hoping that we will get a little bit more this year than we did last. Some things that our collections department has done as well to try to increase payment and make things a little bit easier for those folks that want to pay, and then for tracking down those folks that we have warrants for, is we have gone to social media. We are out on Facebook. We have a Most Wanted page on Facebook. We have a Twitter account and Instagram. And with those 3 social media sites, we've posted 121 offenders on our Most Wanted pages, and the public has submitted 74 anonymous tips, which directly assisted in the apprehension of 98 offenders. So, we're finding it useful. Hopefully that will grow and help us in the future. Still back on collections, in August of 2018, the court began utilizing the web-based program for bench warrants. I will show you that at the end of this presentation. I have a little blurb for you so you can see right on our website where that is. The website allows defendants an opportunity to clear their warrants online. Most warrants are for failing to pay fines and costs. Therefore, defendants can access the database and work out payment plans or pay in full online and get the warrant recalled without ever having to come to the court. In the first 5 months, we've had 110 requests submitted for review. So what we've tried to do is, the whole fear of when you have a warrant is coming to court because they're afraid they're going to go to jail. Well, most of the time, it's for failing to pay fines and costs. So what we've done is we've put a review program out there on the web. They can click on and they can write to their warrant officer and request a payment plan or just talk to them before they actually come in or potentially get arrested. We found that very beneficial as well. SCRAM and community service. SCRAM has taken the place of the intensive supervision program. The intensive supervision program was something that was like a house arrest, and we had officers that would go and check on them daily to make sure that they were monitoring and doing everything that they were supposed to do. It was not cost effective with the caseload reductions and things of that nature. So we switched and went over to a SCRAM. The SCRAM is, if you don't know, it's a tether that goes around the ankle and it monitors the offenders to make sure that they're not drinking. We've had 116 referrals with 106 successful completions. The utilization of SCRAM led to the savings of 11,142 jail bed days with a total savings of $501,390, and that's calculated at $45 a day. Community service, for those of you that haven't been around, while Community Corrections has been here, District Court monitored Community Corrections grant for several years, and last year the state indicated that they would no longer pay for community corrections. Therefore, District Court took over the community service, they would no longer fund community service portion of community corrections. So District Court took over community service so that we could still put those offenders out in the public doing some work to help pay off fines and costs or to substitute jail term. So with community service, we have had 223 defendants, 71,415 savings in jail bed days. So a total of 703 hours, 1,587 days were completed at various nonprofit and county agencies. At a calculation of $10 a day, $10 an hour, the financial benefit to the county was $44,145 and $32,015 to nonprofits. Now, community service also helps with the fair. I know that they put in a lot of hours at the fair, helping with trash, helping with flowers, and several other things that Denise has them busy doing. The specialty courts are nothing new to District Court. We've had those for quite some time. We have an aggression court. Judge Mazur presides over the aggression court. He has since its inception, and we are just completed the 14th year. He's had 82 successful completions for 2018, with 1,151 since inception and 257 cases referred to the probation department for pre-sentence investigations. Our mental health court, Judge Claren presides over that, and he has since its inception as well. We've just completed our 10th year with 49 cases referred and 18 discharged successfully. Revenue. Here's our revenue collections.
Tammy, Tony's got a question.
I'm sorry, yes.
I'm not familiar with the aggression court. What is that?
It's a fancy name for domestic violence. So it's a court that specializes in domestic violence. We have one judge, we have 2 specific probation officers that are trained in domestic violence, and the idea is to have a more specialized approach to help reduce reoffending.
What's the rationale behind calling it aggression court instead of domestic violence?
It was domestic violence several years ago at the very beginning when we were funded by grant dollars. Once the grant dollars went away, the court decided that we wanted to have more than just domestic violence because there were cases where there was an aggravated assault, there was other types of violence that maybe started as domestic but wasn't actually charged as a domestic. So we wanted to broaden that to get more folks into the program, so we expanded the name to aggression court. You're welcome. Revenue, I have things broken down for you from 2017 to 2018. You can see the bottom line is that district court collected $5,267,559. That's the total amount that district court collected. The amount that went to the Jackson County Treasurer is $3,067,000. Jackson Library, $533,000. Local municipalities, $279,000, and the state of Michigan, $1.3 million. Now, you'll notice that the money that went to the Jackson County Treasurer for us, there was a decrease of $146,000 from 2017 to 2018. So, based on reduction of cases, when caseload's down, collection is down, revenue collection is down. The expenses, you can see the majority of our expenses are personnel costs. The total expenses for district court in 2018 was $3.4 million. If you look at our personnel costs, we did have a reduction in personnel costs from 2017 to 2018 of $43,469. So we did have a decrease last year in personnel costs as well. Yes.
Could you explain a little bit of what some of the contractual costs would be?
Contractual would be our SCRAM units, so we contract with an outside agency to help monitor the SCRAM units. Contract would be our collections department. Some of our online services, so the online warrants, we contract with a company that puts the website together and does all of that. Contract, I think that's it. I think our SCRAM, our online, our warrants, interpreters, thank you. Language interpreters. I think that's it.
Okay. And then could you explain, just in few words,
Sure.
what some of the other expenses are? Because I see it's almost $4 million.
The other expenses are everything else that we can't throw into the
Like a
materials.
miscellaneous kind of a thing?
Yes, it's
Oh,
a
okay.
miscellaneous cost.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
We're down $43,000. We reduced one full-time employee. Does that sound right? Because we talked about traffic, I think, being down from 9 to 1 over an extended period of time.
Correct. So the 43, what happened in 2018 is I eliminated 2 positions and brought on a deputy court administrator as a succession plan. So when doing that, we didn't have the full cost of one personnel reduction. We had about half.
Okay.
So we didn't save the full amount because we brought on the deputy.
And then any further loss of activity probably is going to result in more savings on personnel costs?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Jackson Traffic Safety, this is something that, again, we've had for several years. The amount that goes to Jackson Traffic Safety has decreased considerably. I just put that there so that this board that basically oversees the traffic safety now could see the amount of revenue that went there. Public Defender, which I know all of you have heard a lot about Public Defender and the MIDC in the last several months. This just gives you a picture of what we've done at District Court with the Public Defender. And last year, Public Defender cost the county $16,254. So that, I think, this will probably be the last time I report on Public Defender. And in conclusion, I wanted to show our enhancements, if I can get it to open for you. Yep, so if you can look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see ticket resolution. You can go online now. If you have a traffic ticket and you want to basically contested instead of coming in for an informal hearing, you might be able to resolve it online. So this is an open website where you can go in, you click, you can make comments to the police officer, comments to the magistrate, and then the magistrate looks at all of it, looks at the driving record, looks at the comments, looks at the ticket, and makes a determination if they can resolve it there or if they actually need to come to court for whatever reason. So this has been very helpful, I think, to the public and to us as well. It has reduced the number of informal hearings that the magistrate has had.
Tammy, any idea how many it's been reduced by or percentage ballpark or no?
You would ask that one question. It's in my annual report.
I'll look in that then.
Under informal hearings, it's in there. Warrant amnesty is the next. That usually will say warrant review, but we just started an amnesty program April 1st, and it runs through the end of May, and so we added amnesty there. So basically, with the amnesty program, anyone that has outstanding fines and costs, they can go on there, basically discuss with our warrant enforcement team. If it's a matter of just fines and costs, they can get a 20% reduction on their fees if they pay in full. So we're trying to bring in a little bit more there. Online payments and records, that's something that's been there for quite some time. If you want to look up anything on payments or records, you can go there. Court calendar's been there for a while. Next is our warrant list. So if you want to see a warrant list of all the warrants that we have at district court, you can look there. It's several hundred pages long. And then our most wanted. So if you want to look and see who is most wanted by our court, you can go there and look. And that is all I have, other than the last thing I wanted to talk about was our fingerprints. And we have started fingerprinting. We started that a few months ago. And so far, with the number of prints that we're doing, we're bringing in an average of about 1,200 per month from fingerprints. So if you know anyone that needs fingerprints, send them our way.
And that would be for what type of activity? Background checks, Tammy?
Yes, background checks, anything you need fingerprints for, school, coaching, and we do, the majority of it is obviously for our court, for the offenses, but we do other fingerprinting as well.
It's scanned fingerprints?
Scanned fingerprints, yes.
Okay. And again, Commissioners, there's a link with a packet that takes you to Tammy's website, or the district court website has all the individual reports there,
Correct.
if you can't sleep at night. Any more questions for Tammy? Thank you.
Thank you. You sure can. You're welcome.
Next up, we have the Circuit Family Probate Court Annual General Statistics. Charles, good morning.
Good morning. I've given you a quick snapshot of what our numbers were for last year, and I will entertain any questions on that, but I have some updates that I want to go over. Over the weekend, I received an email from the president of the Family Court Administrators Association indicating that they anticipate the legislature on Raise the Age to start moving some more of the legislation package that has been previously submitted, and you know, a lot of the roadblocks are in the funding aspect of it. They're working on kind of a two-part system. We're not sure what's currently in the legislation, but they're calling it a one-time startup cost for counties. That could be building-related, you know, if we were looking at one of the wings at the youth center to do some updates to, because you don't want to intermingle 17-year-old youths with 11, 12, 13, 14. But training, supplies, if we need additional cuffs, So we're going to be meeting, the association needs a new update. We've done one about 3 years ago. We're going to go back and look at our numbers. The original projections that we worked on with Jeremy at the time when he was the director at the youth center ranged anywhere from 900,000 to 1.2 million annual costs, depending on the services that the 17-year-olds would need when they come into our care. But if anybody hears anything more from MAC too, I check in with Deb occasionally. The other side of that is the annual costs beyond if they do go to some kind of a one-time cost startup for counties, will be how it's paid for. Two proposals that are still active are one, for courts and counties to keep track of all costs for the 17-year-olds that become into the juvenile court system, paid at 100%, or the other one was to raise the child care fund reimbursement rate, which is currently at 50%, to 68%. And that would be all expenses. That would be the entire child care fund budget, which is just under about $5 million. In looking at some of the number projections that we have, our suggestion and vote was for the permanent increase of that 18% over a larger amount for a longer period of time. We'll see where that goes when the legislation, there's a feeling that it could happen by summer. We're hoping for at least a 2-year implementation because there's a lot of system changes that have to happen between district, family court, and all the planning.
So, Charles, do you see this turning into an unfunded mandate in any
David,
regard?
I hope not. I'm hoping that the legislation actually has wording in it like the MIDC does, that when they pass new standards, unless they're paid for by the state, the counties won't have to implement them.
So when you started out your conversation by saying initial startup cost, I didn't quite catch what you meant by that. That counties would have to fund that, you mean, or the state would?
No, the state would if it passed, they're going to set up a bunch of, processes. I heard they're going to do it like maybe a grant program. So you would fill out a series of paperwork to say, we need some renovations to the D-wing to be able to segregate the 17-year-olds from the general population of the other residents at the youth center. There's safety, training concerns, those kinds of things. They're looking at it as a one-time cost versus if we get a 17-year-old who has a myriad of issues and has to go into residential treatment, that is a much more expensive option because we do have an awful lot of our folks, that juveniles, that come into the system which have mental illness issues. They have a lot of tragedy that's happened in their lives, addiction, and we'll have to look at all those kind of on a case-by-case basis. But one kid that has, a lot of those issues can cost a lot of money,
Commissioners, any other questions for Charles on this issue? And if not, I'd like to go back to you've got a 3-page document on board docs for us. And it has the caseload by year and then the general revenue summary by year. I don't see expenditure by year, but any idea why the appeals and admin reviews and writs are down so significantly over all the prior years?
Those, no, they fluctuated. If you look at 2014, it was down to 100. Then last year it was back up to 130. It just depends on case flow.
Okay, and then my only other question on that document is on inmate reimbursement. We only hit 23%, had projected 64,000 and took in almost 17. And every other year, it's either over, the revenue's over what we anticipated or pretty close.
Well, those cases, which for the commissioners, when a crime is committed in prison and charged, and since we have a number of prisons here in Jackson, it comes to our court system. The state allows us to charge back anywhere from $775 to, so I've seen them, about the highest one I've seen is about $3,000, depending on if it's multiple days of trial. For the attorney appointment reimbursement, some of the prosecutorial costs, but they come in sporadically. We had a bunch that just came in, and I just looked for the month of March, we had $57,000 that just came in.
So that's inmate reimbursement to the courts by the state then?
Yes.
I see,
MDOC,
I see.
right.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions for Charles? Phil?
I'm not
I've got
sure
a
you're
couple of
the exact person to ask, but these unpaid reimbursements and unpaid fines, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes over at the courts, okay? But if we had more probation officers and kept these people on probation until their fines were paid, I mean, to me, probation is, I can't go out and drink Saturday night at the bar. If I get caught, I could get thrown in jail. So I'm one step out of jail. If we had more probation people to have a bigger probation department, would we pay for them with a higher collection of fines?
The problem with us is with the adult probation being MDOC employees. They do, while they're on probation, try to get them to pay fines and costs. The state always gets their state mandated costs first. The other thing in the mix is restitution to the victims. And, and when when a payment's made, the state gets their share, there's a certain percent that goes to restitution, and then if there's anything left to cover attorney fees or court costs that may have been accessed, the pie gets a lot smaller as you go down that funnel. But back to your question, the state doesn't look at their probation agents as being collections officers for local funding units. So I would have to say, no, I don't believe that adding more, unless their function was to, one, make sure that these folks are getting employed and being able to, because a lot of them have child support and those things too, to pay toward their costs. Technically, yes, but when you look at the caseloads that these folks have, and if they've met, the judges sometimes do, if they're on probation for 5 years, they do occasionally extend it out for payment, but if they did that for every case that didn't pay every, amount that was assessed, we would have people that might be there forever on probation. Sometimes it's trying to get, money from folks that aren't making very much. And the one thing we don't want to do is to cause them to have to go out and to steal something to pay. That's But one of the big things going on right now with the Cunningham case that happened is the assessment of costs by courts has been severely limited now. A circuit court has always had very limited, we can't come up with different fines and things that are not statutorily based. And now, when we assess court costs, it has to be it's a big, long formula that we have to figure on actual court costs per case, and depending on, they passed a temporary law that's going to sunset next year that actually still allow us to assess court costs. That might go away. That may be true in some situations.
So Phil, or I guess Charles can just reiterate it again, we don't have any say in how many probation officers there are. Those are
No.
corrections
But-
for circuit
But
court.
actually, we're going to be getting,
More.
3 or so more over the next several months because of caseloads. Well, they have control of their probation officers. We can't, order them to do things beyond whatever it is that they, what their job duties are. I wish we could. Okay.
Charles, did you have more?
Yeah, just a little bit. Adult Recovery Court, who we started that back in 2004. We have just under 100 folks in that right now. That's a whole lot. We've been blessed to have federal grants, and we get about close to $500,000 a year in that, and that's going well. Community Corrections Program, as Tammy alluded to, we took it over last year. It was kind of a rebuilding year. We're having a good year this year. It's slow, but we're going in the right direction. The Courthouse Security and Safety Committee is active. Mr. Elwell is sitting on that, and we're pursuing some additions to make it more safe for the public and staff. The state is still working on their paperless court filing system called MiFi. I don't anticipate it getting to us, hopefully. Still working on a lot of bugs in the next 2-3 years. And I had indicated that MDOC is going to be adding several staff over the next few months, and we're working with county administration on where to put them.
Okay,
That's it.
Commissioners, any other questions for Charles? No? Charles, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we're at the Animal Shelter Clerk position. Lydia. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here, as you probably saw on my staff report, to request the new position of an additional clerk at the animal shelter. We currently have one clerk at the shelter, and we are open 6 days a week. In addition to the traffic at the shelter is increased, and so we're looking for one more clerk position.
Lydia, you've got other hires, I think, that you want to do, or staffing issues you're going to bring up at some other point in time? Is that your plan?
Correct. Next month, I'll be back with a comprehensive report, my semi-annual report, or quarterly report.
And revenues are up over the prior year significantly, correct? For your
Yes.
department? Okay.
Yes, we are looking at, judging from 2017 to 18, it went up 35%, and then from 2018 to 2019, 106.94%.
And I read the workflow on it. It looks like it went through a lot of people, including Richard, and I assume that there's a job description done on it?
On the clerk? Yes.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions? Phil? Okay, his motion, is there support? Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Next up, we have Under Sheriff Cool with the 911 and IT Tyler Technology annual fees. Under Sheriff Cool.
Good morning, Commissioners. Myself and the 911 Director are here asking for, or looking for approval to pay the yearly software maintenance fees for Tyler Technology. So for some of the newer Commissioners, we have one platform based on one company that conducts most of our public safety resources. You can think of there's three components within that public safety platform. There's the computer-aided dispatching, which affects Director Hammond's group of people, and that allows you to process the call, take the 911 data, create the call. Then there's the law enforcement records portion, which all police agencies in this county use. That's what we put our police reports into, investigative leads, various documents that we would house for our investigations. And then there's the correction management side, which allows us to do the bookings when we intake people within the jail, house booking photos, locate the people within the jail as far as where we house them, what unit, etc., housing history on them, like our booking intake forms, all the stuff related to the actual housing of the individual. All these platforms work together as one, so kind of the concept is from 911 call through police report to arrest, it's kind of one system that follows the documents all the way through. So if you have a police agency that goes to said 911 call, they arrest said woman or man, they take her to jail, you could pull up all those documents and see kind of everything from beginning to conclusion where they're brought to the jail. A lot of these things are required within the court aspects of, making the arrest and things like that. So that's what this system is. It's three components. With the movement of the 911 department to its own department, we kind of had to break up this contract because now there's separate customers versus having just one customer as the sheriff. So prior to this, the maintenance costs had kind of escalated yearly, and in about 2016, 2017, they became unmanageable. Those were negotiated by a couple past IT directors. So we began some dialogue about reducing those costs, and within that, part of that kind of movement or agreement was last fall, the board approved a movement to kind of a new platform within this software for the 911 department. This provides them a lot more latitude and functionality, allows them to leverage some of the new technologies out of the 911 center, and moves it to kind of more of a cloud-based, well, maybe not cloud-based, but moves it off of a server-based platform where everything was very tied to servers. Server space was becoming very critical here. So this is kind of the next part of it, and that's how we obtained that significant reduction, that cost down from about 180 to, if you look at it now, it's a little over 130 for all of the components. So I talked about earlier that all the police agencies in Jackson County use the records management portion. The county covers those costs. It's about $26,000 for some licenses, but the aspect of having everybody on that central reporting and central data solution where everybody can find each other's records if you're looking for an investigative lead. We are a large county, but we're small. Everything kind of interacts and overlaps with each other. Those costs are, the benefits far outweigh the cost of the county having everybody on that system, because the central records reporting, where you're not looking in 5 different databases to find investigative leads, things like that, that is hugely beneficial. So within this new movement, we have a couple new functions available to us onto this newer platform or more advanced platform, and one of them is a reporting function or reporting tool for law enforcement. We currently have a solution within our records management that all the law enforcement agencies can use. It's called data analysis mapping. It is very burdensome, to say the least. It requires almost like an advanced degree to use it. We're getting rid of that because it's not very functional, and we're moving to a much easier application that will be available to all law enforcement agencies. It allows you to pull out data for whatever you're looking for in a much more simplistic fashion. Frankly, it makes the data much easier to use. This will also be within the 911 function as well. So there are some changes to it, but probably one of the most important things that the IT department has been pushing for is that because we're on this older style platform, all of the mobile data computers in all the law enforcement agency vehicles throughout Jackson County are kind of locked to a Windows 7 platform, and the support on that Windows 7 platform is expiring. So with the movement onto this and the paying of the fees for this new more advanced functionality within this software, we can now move beyond that up to a more current version of Windows on those in-car computers, and won't be tied to kind of that archaic software platform.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Darius.
just so I can make sure I understand this, now this section of the software that you're talking about, that's not the complete overall piece, right? That's just a section of it that you're updating?
So there's going to be a couple sections that are significantly upgraded, and one, we're talking about the mobile solution, which is how we get data out to the police cars, and how we get both the calls and the ability for the officers in the field to do kind of reporting and a variety of things through their in-car computers. And then we're also talking about another movement for the 911 platform to be able to leverage even more options within the software. So we are changing and advancing two of the platforms, the 911 portion and the law enforcement function, specifically the mobile computer aspect.
And the mobile computer is the section where you said all of Jackson County Police Services are using that? Is that correct?
Yes, but to a larger extent, we all use the mobile data solution, but even to a larger extent, all of the police agencies use the records portion where we put the actual police reports into and investigative leads and things like that.
So with that being said, is this part of the software, is this a shared cost or is this all in Jackson County?
This is all Jackson County, but the lion's share of it is ours anyways because we have all of the licenses and all of the server applications and things like that that all run through county IT. So really the other police agencies are really just kind of end users, and that's where I kind of reference that the cost attributed to other agencies would be about $26,000. So when you think about all the police agencies on that, that's not significant. And then, of course, the benefits, like I talked about earlier, of having everybody putting their data into one spot is way more beneficial than that $26,000. But the county does carry all the costs.
And then my last question, you said this was an annual, or this is an annual fee that we pay. How long have we had this, the complete, what was it called, the Tyler Tech fees? How long have we
So we've had this software solution for probably since about 2012 or 2013.
So it's relatively still.
Yes, we did go through a couple variations, and we actually went out in 2016, actually probably more like 2017, and examined a number of other functions as far as software platforms to be able to conduct kind of public safety operations. There were some advantages to some, disadvantages to the other. The problem that we have is that we can't find anybody for this amount of cost. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, but they're way more expensive, that can conduct all three aspects, both the 911 aspect, the law enforcement records, and the correction management aspect, and make those all work together. So just real quick, not to belabor the point, but it was a previous software company called New World. Tyler Technologies bought them several years ago. The main problem with New World was their customer service or lack thereof. That's significantly improved. They've alleviated a lot of the concerns that public safety, for the most part, has had with New World. So this transition to this new company a few years ago has been beneficial, and we feel comfortable, at least in the meantime, staying with them. We're not contractually obligated, but as we found out as we began to research these other companies, our data is locked in this system, and we can move it to another system for a cost, but that cost is almost more than the software is altogether, and we've got years of historical data in here.
And you answered my last question with that as well, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chris, just a couple of questions from your points. I think Darius asked the one, so it's just for 1 year is what we're approving, correct?
That's correct. We don't really have a contractual obligation with them anymore. They just ask for like a 90-day notice that we're not going to continue or something of that nature.
And then significantly, you talked about the update to Windows, because we're all operating on Windows 7 right now because that's what the system requires. Our agency's going to have to switch to Windows 10, and have they been given notice of that or not?
I don't have a conclusive answer to that, but my understanding is that at the end of this year, the support for Windows 7 goes away. So therefore, your computers will no longer be the mobile data terminals will no longer be considered secure by MyCGN, so therefore you cannot access any of the outside applications. Now, all of the Toughbooks that should be in service are all capable of being updated to a higher Windows version, and IT has that software. Now, I don't know whether there's a cost per terminal to use that or whether it's a blanket, like enterprise type of license, but we just have to have that accomplished by the end of the year in order to remain compliant.
And then lastly, just to clarify, all agencies in the county except the state police are on this platform.
Yes, good
And
catch.
the fire departments also use an aspect of it for dispatching, correct?
Yes, the fire departments have been getting a little farther into this as they start moving, and I'm going to get in front of my skis a little bit here. The 911 director could probably answer this better, but as they start moving towards this mutual aid box alarm system where they're kind of dispatching assets based on location and not jurisdiction, they're starting to use some of that MABUS stuff through central dispatch a little bit to a greater degree to kind of locate assets and things like that, receiving dispatches, and even to some degree, I think adding some type of text or narrative to some of their calls.
Bill, and then Tony? Oh, Tony, go ahead.
In reviewing your motion request here, on the current situation, item A, I know different professions use different terminologies, so here's, starting in the fall of 2016, the number of public safety data systems were elevated and researched. What does elevated mean relative to that?
It means I didn't spell check it good enough. Evaluated should be the proper term in there. That's when we set out and examined a number of other systems to see who could provide what functionality, and we didn't find any significant cost savings, so I apologize for that.
Okay, I was assuming there was some law enforcement term I was not familiar with. Under G, Director McClish from the IT department reviewed the agreement. It doesn't state what was the result of her review.
Yeah, so when we had got this reduction and the movement to these new platforms and the ability to leverage some of these advantages, once the Tyler Technologies submitted this 31-page document to us, both myself and the director reviewed it. Obviously, we don't have the technical mind that the IT director does, so we forwarded it to her for a review to make sure there was not any clauses in there that would tie the county to something that we weren't willing to, or some type of language within there that required some type of greater financial commitment by the county, since she is well aware of the terms that would be widely used in the IT world. So she reviewed this agreement and did not find any of those things in there that would cause her concern, both from her group having to implement it and from our users' end.
Okay. And under under analysis, item 4, says that these payments were due to them at the beginning of the year. So at this point, are we late with our payment?
So it was supposed to be due on January 1, but they know that we haven't paid yet because A, they knew that it requires Board of Commissioner approval, and B, they did not get us the updated agreement till approximately mid-February, and we told them that it was going to undergo at least a 45-day review process by IT, so they know full well that they will not be receiving payment until the board either authorizes or chooses not to authorize the approval for these payments. So technically, by agreement terms, it was due on January 1. They know that we are not going to be paying until the board approves, and they're okay with that. They were late getting the document to us.
Okay. And so this agreement is strictly for the county central dispatch. It's going to be a separate agreement for the sheriff. So you're coming back at some later date with another request for the same software for the sheriff's department?
No, we are asking for one agreement, and the dispatch portion of the 911 department would pay, if you look onto the, I broke the cost down on one of the back pages, so the cost for the 911 department would be $46,000, the cost for sheriff would be $85,000 and some change, so a total of $131,749. So what we did within this agreement is basically we made sub-partners within the agreement. We made the corrections and law enforcement records attributable to the customer, as in the sheriff, and then we made the 911 computer-aided dispatching function attributable to the customer of Jackson County 911. So we're like partners or sub-partners within the agreement, but there's one agreement for Jackson County with two sub-customers under, if that makes sense. One motion to pay both the fees attributable to the respective departments.
Chris,
Okay.
did you have any more for us? You all done, Tony, or?
No.
Okay.
Reading the agreement from Tyler, they replaced the old agreement with two new licensing agreements. One for the Jackson County Sheriff under a separate agreement, and one for the Jackson County Central Dispatch under this agreement. So if this license and service agreement is signed, it specifically states it's for the dispatch only.
So I'm not going to tell you that that's disingenuous, but there are going to be two partners under this agreement, because actually, technically, if you go way back to the beginning of this contract, back in, I think, 2011 or 2010, the County of Jackson was the contractual partner. Not sheriff, not any of that. The County of Jackson was the contractual partner. All of our licenses were listed under Jackson County Sheriff. With the 911 department moving, we needed to give them their own ability to be a customer within the New World, or within the Tyler Technologies licenses, so they can make changes, adjustments, et cetera. So we split that out. So there will be, I guess if you want to technically look at it as two agreements, there will be, but the 131,749, whatever the total costs are, those are the total costs. There will not be an additional cost, and there won't be anything coming back. We're looking for one motion on the agreement. I can clarify that and make sure that the one agreement is inclusive with two separate customers within that.
So, Tony, let's,
If you would, please, because the supporting cost figures, Jackson County Central Dispatch, a cost figure of $46,652. The next page was the Jackson County Sheriff for reference only.
so Tony, let's, again, the amount that you're looking for, Chris, is 131,749, correct? And
That is correct.
That's set to go to the full board, so what I think we should do is send it to the full board for that amount. And Tony, that question or others you have, steer to Mike. Mike can work with Chris to get any answers before our Tuesday meeting. Fair enough?
Okay.
I will have them insert language that clarifies that, so it does not appear there's going to be a second agreement or that those costs do not.
Steve, did you have a
Adequately covered.
question?
Thank you.
Else set?
Not now, I was just going to help Chris with the fact that these are scribblers areas. Tuesday night.
Great. Okay, so looking for a motion, Phil?
Make a motion. We approve this request.
Support?
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Undersheriff.
Thank you.
You're still up with the corrections deputy to sergeant reclassification and add a corrections deputy position.
Yes, good. I'm looking for kind of two actions here. Number one is to reclassify two corrections positions to sergeant or supervisor positions, and the addition of one full-time equivalent employee in the corrections division or a corrections deputy. So just a little bit of background, we moved to 12-hour shifts at the union's request in June of 2018. They became formalized on July 1 of 2018. That is done through a letter of agreement in their collective bargaining. We as management still have management rights. If we wanted to direct them back to an 8-hour shift, we could. It's not somehow locked within their contract, but this was at their request, and frankly, it increases coverage and helps with coverage. Obviously, with the two jail facilities, when you create 12-hour shifts, you have 4 platoons or 4 groups or 4 shifts, whatever you want to call them, so an 8 total between the two facilities, because you have 2 groups on days, 2 groups on nights, and then throughout the 2 jails, that brings us to the 8. So we currently have 6 supervisors, so we're only able to cover 6 of those platoons or shift groups, whatever you'd like to call them. And the remaining 2, we have been kind of designating an acting sergeant or an acting supervisor based on the shift staffing on there, who was kind of the most senior, who demonstrated leadership abilities, and we would make them an acting supervisor for that shift period. Based on the collective bargaining agreements, we're required to pay them the sergeant working wage if they're executing the sergeant's job. So that's how the sergeant reclassification kind of becomes cost neutral. But we'll talk a little more about that. So it has been sufficient. We've been able to cover this, and kind of the main thing that we want to do is look at the reduction in the overtime spending, which is what we're trying to target. And we wanted to make sure that any reduction in overtime cost was fully shown or vetted out in this kind of trial shift period. And we did reduce overtime spend by a little more than $100,000 for the last half of the year of 2018. And looking at the first quarter of 2019, again, I wanted to make sure that that was consistent and not just an anomaly. We're about $26,700 under where we were at the same point in 2018. So if you add that into 4 quarters, it appears to be about $100,000 to $110,000 reduction that we should be able to sustain. So going back to kind of the supervisors, the supervisors are working supervisors. They are down in booking or in the control area at the respective jails. They're doing a number of things, not just the supervision. So there is not a complete loss of manpower. They are still conducting some activities and some operations, but one of their main goals is to obviously supervise and direct the staff. The other thing that we kind of like about 12-hour shifts is that there's a kind of a direction of accountability, right? That supervisor has a group of people, and he or she works with that group of people consistently every day. It's not a rotating shift like 8 hours is where you have kind of a roll through the week as far as days off are concerned. And then, of course, the 12-hour shifts, the staff likes them a little bit better because they have every other weekend off. So within that, obviously, the consistency of a designated supervisor is fairly beneficial, especially in a correctional environment, and we would like to have that consistency, which is why I'm asking for that here, to have a designated, trained supervisor, not just an acting supervisor who is just kind of filling the spot for the day, where we've been undertaking that for the last 8 months or so. And as I talked earlier about the cost reduction, that is kind of how I am looking to pay for the additional full-time equivalent employee. A brand-new corrections deputy would cost about $67,500 with wages and benefits, and we have a little over $100,000 reduction. Obviously, I'm not going to ask for two because the reduction does not cover those kind of costs, but also we have a number of things happening both with the MIDC proposal and how those things will change our operations within the jail. So at this point, saying what I said earlier about the supervisors are still working, I believe with the addition of one employee, we can still maintain our core operations, maintain all of our coverage, and that's why I'm not initially asking for two, since two are being reclassified. So kind of in summary, in running this by MMRMA, they agreed that having obviously a designated supervisor is far more beneficial than an acting capacity where we've been operating for the last many months, and then the hope is the continued reduction in overtime costs within the county jail operations will fund that additional FTE. Now obviously if those costs change and we can begin to kind of amp up on the overtime spend, we're going to have to address that, whether it be through a layoff of an individual or a reclassification back down of supervisors, things like that. I don't expect the county to exclusively take those costs and not have some type of reduction on the expenditure end.
So Chris, I think you've hit on two of my questions. One was, does the savings from the 8 hours to 12 hours zero out the cost of this promotion to sergeant? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, so the sergeants, and I didn't go really deep enough into it, but the sergeants is kind of a cost neutral. I mean, there will be a little bit of cost, but right now we're paying the whoever's designated on that shift that day as an acting sergeant, we are paying them the sergeant's wage because that's what we're required by contract. They're fulfilling those job obligations, they're directing people, they're doing all the things that a sergeant does, so they are paid the sergeant wage. So really we're just going to formalize the promotion of these individuals to sergeant, whoever it may be. So there's not going to be really a significant cost change because we've realized that for the last 8 months. We've been paying them that wage. The reduction in the overtime is where I believe we will fully pay for the additional FTE.
Yeah, that I should have been more clear. That's what I'm talking about. So the additional deputy will be paid for by the savings on overtime?
Yes, that is what we anticipate, and I believe that's what's been shown out over the last 6 months and then the first quarter of this year.
And then none of this is part of the MIDC yet, correct? There may be later requests to
Yes, none of
fulfill that
this is,
obligation?
yep, that's exactly correct. This is just a reorganization or a streamlining of our operations, has nothing to do with MIDC.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if there's no further motion, or if there's no further question, I'd like to offer motion to accept.
Okay. So to be clear, it doesn't note that it goes to the full board, but I think it does because it's an increase in a position, does it not? Okay. Yeah, mine didn't show that on the agenda here, but, okay, so we have a motion to send the issue to the full board and a support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, name. Motion carried. Thank you, Undersheriff.
Thank you.
Next up, we have JC Dot, our friends.
Good morning, friends.
Morning. First up, you have Salt.
Yes. It's a love-hate relationship with salt. It's so expensive, but yet we need it. We received bids, worked with Calhoun County again. Unfortunately, the bad news is we had a 21.6% increase over last year, but this was expected because we had exceptionally low bids last year. We are looking at ways to conserve salt usage. I just want to point out a couple of things. Mild winters actually present new costs that People sometimes think because we're not getting all the snow that we can save all kinds of money, but the truth of the matter is these mild winters with freezing rain and sleet actually require more salt use, and we still have to run our plow trucks throughout the county. So bottom line is we're looking at an award of not to exceed $2 million, and I just want to alert you to the fact that we use about 25 to 30% of that amount for state trunk lines, which is reimbursed by MDOT. So just over $1 million would come out of our county general fund. We don't know that we're going to need $2 million. That would be a record level of salt usage, but we are looking at ways to conserve usage. We did this year as well, so we're trying to be very careful with this gold, so to speak.
Chris, looking at the bid tab, it looks like Morton had the successful bid, or the one you're recommending.
Correct.
And am I reading it right? Well, and that price is for delivered to our locations, variety of them, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And they're charging us more if we go and pick it up than to have it delivered?
Yeah.
Strange.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Okay.
They want to keep their drivers busy, apparently. So
If they want to do it cheaper, that's fine with me.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Phil, take note.
That's right.
Okay, we have a motion and a support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Tony, yep. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Culverts.
Every year, we come to you with bids on repricing for culverts, and this year, we're recommending award to Jensen Bridge and Supply for a cost not to exceed $200,000. I just want to point out that this is an assortment of culverts. We tried to get apples and apples, looking at the various vendors. We had 4 vendors respond, which was a great response, actually. Many of these culverts will be used on projects for our local road projects, so it's a record level of culvert replacements, but they count as local match and/or they are charged to the projects and reimbursed to us.
Hey, Commissioners, any questions of Chris? If not, we're looking for a motion to send it to the full board.
Support?
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Blackman Local Roads Agreement.
Thank you. The board has seen this before with Spring Arbor and Summit. This is actually required by Act 111 of 1956. County and the township have to enter into a contract specifying the terms of agreement for all the road work. Blackman's millage was approved last fall, as you know, for a $27 million project, of which we are responsible for 30% of that. So the agreement basically articulates the details, lays out the maps and the schedules, and basically stipulates some terms of payment and how the billing will work and all those details.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on the agreement? And if not, we'd be looking for a motion to send this to the full board. By Phil, and Tony made the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Portable lift.
Henrietta is our only garage that does not have 2 lifts, and we have record levels of work on our equipment, given our growth and the capacity that we're building to repair roads. So in the middle of winter, when we're trying to change blades and so forth, the garages actually do use both lifts, whether or not they're doing mechanical or not. They're changing blades on the plows in quick fashion, sort of like a pit stop in a NASCAR race. They want to get the trucks in and get them back out. So this can be approved at committee level. It's a cost of $71,390. You'll see the other quotes that we received, and our crews did vet out each product very carefully, and Allied is verified as one that can support even our tandem axle trucks.
And the quote that you got's cheaper than my deal, correct? Is that the one that I read, I think?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Tony?
I had one question. Reading through your presentation here, the portable lift can be moved out of the way when you need that space for other things. Will it be moved to a different place inside the garage so it stays out of the weather?
The portable lifts will never be outside.
Okay.
Just to be clear, yes, but they can be moved out of the way so the stall can be used for other work. That's one nice thing about these units. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'd be looking for a motion, again, that gets approved at this level. Darius?
Yeah, I just have one question. With the other lifts that you have at other facilities, are those portable as well?
No, those are in ground.
Okay, so is this the only portable one we have?
I believe
Or will
it is.
have, I guess.
Is that right, Bruce? Yes, that'd be our first set. We've wanted some for a long time to use for various things, but this will be our first set. We could install a system in the floor. What's that? Correct. We did use them in Calhoun. We were jointly sharing there. We purchased, under my direction, I think 1 or 2 sets there. So we have experience with them. Our team does, just to be clear on that.
Okay.
But it would have been a 6-figure investment to install an in-ground unit, and we couldn't move those or reuse the space for other things. So we like this system.
Okay, if no other questions, looking for a motion, and again, it gets approved here.
Support?
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Michigan Avenue Bridge contract.
This is a project in our engineering division, so I'll have Angie Klein, Director of Engineering, speak to that.
Good morning. All right, the contract that you have before you is it's a right-of-way permit essentially for Amtrak MDOT rail. Because the bridge is over the Amtrak rail, we have to have our board approve this for us to construct in the right-of-way prior to it going to let. So after this is signed by you guys, it will go to MDOT, and then it will go through the normal federal aid process of going to letting, and then the board will sign a construction contract with the dollar amount for the project. But it currently is estimated about $3.5 million for the bridge construction.
Is this the one I'm remembering that there were concerns with from MDOT about who would maintain something quite some time ago? Yeah, how did that get resolved?
Are they talking about when Joe was here before? 'Cause
Are you
it was-
speaking to the liability with the design?
Yeah, there was some
The-
issue with it when we talked about it before here, I think, and it was something to do with Amtrak, and maybe
Yes,
it was a
correct.
liability.
We were being held to a new standard suddenly
Right.
that our consultants would be on the hook forever with liability. So that has been resolved, yes.
To our favor?
Yes. You want to speak to that, Angie, on the details?
I didn't mean to blindside you by it, but it just came to mind for me.
It actually worked out. We had worked with them to come to a different agreement, but our consultant actually decided to sign with that liability. So they raised their umbrella.
Yeah, but the county's not held to.
We're not held to it. It's the consultant that was held to that liability for
Oh.
design. After normally there's a life, or a completion of liability, but this is for the life of the bridge that he's held to it.
Okay. Commissioners, Tony?
Has the Village of Parma or the Township of Parma had any input into this? Are they aware of it?
They're aware of it, yes. They've seen the bridge plans. I've talked to them many times. This project, unfortunately, has been going on for 4 or 5 years, I believe, 3 of which I've been part of, and I've talked to the village and the township at numerous events about the project, updating them on the delays.
Are they in support of this project?
Yeah, they wanted it built 5 years ago. Yep.
Okay. If there's no further questions, a motion to send this to the full board's in order? Motion and support by Tony and Phil. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Local bridge application.
All right, I'll take that one also. So every year, we submit the maximum 5 bridges that we can for our agency. We have an inventory of 64 structures in Jackson County, and 12 of them are in poor or serious condition. So it is really hard to pick 5 to submit, but we worked with our consultant that does our annual bridge inspections and our load ratings, and we have listed there for you guys to approve us to submit those 5 bridges: Kennedy, South Jackson, Bend, Springport, and Albion Road. And then just a side note on there, we have bridges that are in fair and good condition that we're going to do a preventive maintenance package on, because we could also submit for preventive maintenance for the funding, but we believe that we'll get better prices if we do it out of our own budget and submit these 5 bridge applications for actual reconstructs.
So Angie, how do you build this list? Is it the 5 absolute worst bridges, or is it
Well, so
bridges in relation to traffic or other factors, or what?
we rely on input from our consultant that does the inspections, but basically what we did is we have the 12 bridges that are in poor or serious condition, and we have a spreadsheet with the ADTs traffic volumes, how many vehicles use it. The load ratings, because some of them are already load restricted to, I believe our lowest is 5 tons on Kennedy. And we analyze that, and then we pick the 5 that we feel the most comfort submitting. We could submit any of those 12. Schools, fire, 911 calls, if it's lowered too much, we look at all that.
Bill?
Is this just repair?
No, these ones are 5 reconstructs we're submitting for. Last year, you're thinking of when we had a rehab projects in front of you. One of those bridges we're doing on our own, Robbins Bridge, we're replacing the bridge deck out of our budget, so that was one of the submittals last year. And then Bend Road, I believe, is the other one, but that dropped to a replacement this year.
Why was Moon Lake Road Bridge not handled this way?
It was, yep.
But we had to wait and wait for applications?
So when we submit now, we usually don't hear until November or December, but it's 3 years out that you get the funding.
Okay.
So these submittals are for 2022,
And you might not get funding, it's a risk.
yeah.
You'll probably
Okay.
get one, we hope.
Okay, so you're not getting funding automatically for 5 you submit?
No, this is a very competitive grant program.
Okay.
All counties statewide are submitting, and the funding's very limited.
And just because we're submitting 5 doesn't mean we're going to get 5 if we get any, right?
Right, last year we didn't get any, but we have been pretty successful at getting a bridge a year for the last 15 years, I think.
And the
Right,
bridge
so.
funding this comes out of a special bucket of money?
It's the MTF formula, but it comes off the top through the formula.
We pay 5% or no?
5% match is required for the reconstruction, yep,
Plus
or any application, plus the engineering, yes.
Okay, so if no further questions, this goes to the full board. We'd be looking for motion to send the local bridge application to the full board.
So moved.
Motion by Phil, support by Tony. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And monthly report.
We have a lot going on. You knew that we were busy last year in 2018, but I want to point out that 2019 and again in 2020 are going to be the busiest years that we've ever seen in Jackson County in our agency, administering $20 to $30 million in work, I believe, each year. So we've got a lot happening, and you're gonna see a lot coming.
Chris, can you get your presentation up on the screens for the public or no?
I can try.
Not a big deal. Not a big deal, I guess.
Let's see. I'm not going to go through it unless you wanted me to.
No, I'm just looking at your slideshow here,
How do
17
I-
pages.
Not sure how to get out of this screen and do that. Sorry about that.
The ones that have to vote are here, so you
Okay.
can see it.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Moon Lake Road Bridge is on target, on schedule. I believe the span arch, the precast span arches will be coming in the next couple of weeks. Piling, as you can see in the photographs, has been going on. We've taken some drone footage of that. We continue to try to document it. I think what's on everybody's mind right now is grading of gravel roads and patching on our hard surface roads. We have some issues in both camps, and I just want you to know that throughout the Midwest, not just in Michigan, grading gravel roads at this time of year and over the last month or two is extremely challenging because the weather is such a big factor. You can't do it with frozen ground because you can really damage our graders, and you're basically trying to bust up ice. And then when it gets wet and starts to melt, you make a muddy mess. So finally, we're getting some decent weather, and we're hitting those gradually. So if you get some complaints, please forward them to us. We're happy to talk to the resident. And then our patching program you see in slide 17 shows a nice graphic that our team put together with the progress, the plan of action, and you're going to see a lot more patching happening here in the next week or two as the hot mix plants open and provide us with hot mix asphalt. So our privately contracted crews will be out in full force here in the next couple of weeks. Happy to take any questions.
Chris, I've got a couple on the, and then Phil, you'll be next. Let me scroll back to it. On the Blackman pathway, you've got conversation in there about the riprap, I think, about erosion, an erosion issue there.
Angie, you want to handle?
Hopefully I'm looking at the same thing you are. I think I am.
Which slide
It's
is
the
that?
Rive Junction Road pathway, it's slide number 4.
Slide what?
Yes.
How was that, I mean, that's a $10,000 bill that's got to be paid. How was that not made part of the original project?
So this is the ditch there, it was an open ditch system, and the rift drains from the school were releasing into the ditch line, and it was causing erosion. We were going to put some culvert, riprap at the end of the culvert to handle the erosion right where the pipes were, but we worked with the school. They really wanted that system to be enclosed. So we evaluated the cost of what we would have spent to essentially line the ditch with riprap, which was not what we planned on doing. We were just going to do a localized section of riprap. And then they paid Bailey's to actually do the pipe work for enclosing it. So it was above and beyond. It's kind of like the Cadillac version of getting rid of the ditch that we did out there. They just did not want the open ditch system in front of the school anymore.
But it cost us $10,000, but part of that was what we had planned on paying anyway, and the above they paid, is that?
Of maintaining it. I worked with operations, Bob was part of that, and the ditch line, the cleaning it out, that type of thing, we felt that was justified doing that. We won't have to clean out the ditch anymore, and the school is maintaining that closed system.
Okay, and then lastly, I had talked all through this project about having a agreement with the school about who was going to maintain.
We have a draft version of that. Actually, I emailed Corey before this because I knew you were going to ask about it, and we will review it today and then hopefully send it out to the
Okay.
townships to get signed, and then bring to you guys.
That's it for me. Commissioners, do you have any questions on the report? Phil?
I looked at your schedule for 2019, and a few of the roads are in my district.
Okay.
What is the difference between preventative maintenance projects and preventative maintenance chip seal?
So the preventive maintenance projects that we refer to, that's an 1.5-inch overlay, HMA hot mix asphalt.
Okay.
And then chip seal is just a chip sealed road. Those are typically the ones that we've done, skip paving, whether it's with our funds or on whatever type of project, but they're sealed up with the paver patches, and then we're going to chip seal the whole road.
Okay, so you only get the 1.5-inch overlay with preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
You
If
get
there's
the
some-
1.5-inch plus chip seal, or just chip seal on the other?
No, just chip seal. Those have already been. I know that we have a few spots that we're going to do with our crews this year prior to us doing that chip seal, but the federal aid portion is just chip seal.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
Okay, that concludes the main agenda, takes us to claims. BSNA, I think Deb told everyone that was here, BSNA has been down since Friday, so we don't have claims to review. There's no other minutes, and the May reporting schedule is there with JDOT, or JC. Public Defender, 9/11, and Animal Shelter. And takes us back to public comments, if there are any. Brad, do you have anything to say? Silent. Takes us to committee member comments. Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Good meeting, Mr. Chair.